Hey everybody, today we're going to go over a bubble sort. It's a pretty easy sorting algorithm to learn. It's not the best time complexity, it's n squared, so it doesn't work well with large data sets, but if you're just getting started, bubble sort is pretty easy to learn, and it teaches you the basics of sorting algorithms. I think for this video what we're going to do is we're going to start with the visual diagram that we have on the screen now, and I'll kind of step through the algorithm. Then we'll switch and actually code a practical example. And then after that, we can actually step through the code. And I'll put this diagram up on the right-hand side and have the code on the left. And we can kind of see what exactly is going on in the code in relation to the actual algorithm here. So we can go ahead and get started. So these are going to be the indexes of your array. And for bubble sort, the whole idea is you're going to start and look at the first section, the first index of the array. You're going to look at the second index, and you're going to ask the question, is the lower index greater than the second index? And if it is, you're going to swap them, and very slowly you'll see the largest number gets bubbled up to the top. So that's kind of all we have to do. We'll just follow along, look at the first index, look at the index in front of it, ask ourselves a question, is index 0 greater than index 1? In this case it is, right? So if that's the case, we'll go ahead and swap them. So we just moved 5 above 2. Now we're going to ask the same question, but we're going to move up 1 index. So now we'll start here, look at the index in front of it. We'll ask the same question, is index 1 greater than index 2? In this case it's not, so we'll just go ahead and ignore it and keep moving along. So we'll compare index 2 to index 3 now. Is index 2 greater than index 3? Yes, it is. So we'll swap it. Is index 3 greater than index 4? Yes, it is. So we'll swap it. And we know 100% now that over the first iteration, the last number has to be already sorted. It's the largest number in the array. We've moved it all the way up to the right side. So we know index number 4 is done and it's sorted. So I highlighted it in green. It's done. We don't have to touch this anymore. So for our next iteration, we're only going to look from 0 to 3 since we already know this is done. So every iteration, once the last index is sorted, we'll basically sort 1 less every time. So it's going to be the same thing over and over. So we'll just go ahead. Is 0 greater than 1? Index 0 greater than 1? Nope. Index 1 greater than index 2? Nope. Index 2 greater than index 3? Yes, that is true. So we'll swap them, and now we know index 3 is sorted as well. So you'll see now we'll only go to 2. So we'll go to 0, 1, 2 for the next iteration. We'll check. Nope. Yep, this is definitely different. So we'll swap these, and now that one's sorted. And it looks like it's the array is obviously already sorted, but we don't know that. Like the computer doesn't know that until we fully check everything. So we have to do some more iterations still. Is index 0 greater than index 1? Nope. So we'll leave it. Now we know for sure 4 is sorted, and we actually already know that 0 is sorted because we've sorted everything else in the array, so the lowest number has to be at the front. Alright, so now I have my IDE open, and I have a little bit of extra stuff in here. It's not just a hello world, but all I really have is I have a print vector function to make it easier so we can actually see what the vector is before and after sorting. And then I have a couple of print statements to make it look nice, and then I have my vector here. You can use an array. You can use a vector. It doesn't necessarily matter. I like using vectors because the array.size or vector.size command is very easy. With arrays, it's a little bit harder. So for ease for myself, I'm going to use vectors. But you can use an array. It doesn't really matter. But you can see here. So we'll do initial vector, print whatever the vector is, do our bubble sort, and then we'll print sorted vector and then print the actual sorted vector. So I'll just show you what we have so far. Initial vector 52864. You can see over here 52864. And it's going to be the same as the sorted vector right now because we don't actually have a bubble sort implementation. So we can go ahead and start writing this function. It's not going to be too bad. It's going to be a void function. Name it bubble sort. And I'll put my vector in here, an int vector. We're going to pass it by reference, so it actually changes the array variable out of scope of this function. And we should be good to go. So the first thing we're going to do is a for loop, so we can actually iterate over this array. We'll do I is less than array.size. Whoops. I++. So one thing you're going to have to notice, and I think I covered it a little bit earlier, is once you've sorted this portion of your array, so once you've sorted everything except for the first value, no matter what, is going to be the lowest value in the array. It's just kind of a given. So because of that, instead of iterating over 5 times on this array, because n equals 5, we can iterate n times for this outer one. And all this is going to do is basically say, once we've run 4 iterations here, we know for sure that the first index is going to be sorted. So we'll just stop running the program at that point. We'll stop running that loop. So for the inner one, we'll do for j equals 0. J is less than array. Oops. Dot size minus I. So we'll have to do I, because you can see over here, every time we do an iteration, the actual area we're sorting is 1 less, right? So every time we do an iteration, we're going to take 1 index off of the array to sort. That index can be easily found using I. So basically when I is 0, the first iteration will go through all 5. The second iteration will be 1. We're just going to go from 0 to 3. I is going to be 2, and the third iteration will go from 0 to 2. So it'll keep shrinking down. So that's why we do minus I. We'll also do minus 1 here. And that's because if you look here, once we're actually looking at stuff, so you have to think that this arrow right here, you can think of it as J. It's going to be in our inner loop. So J is our first arrow. And then we're going to look at the index in front of it, which will be J plus 1. And then we'll compare it, right? So once you keep going, you know, J here is 1 less than the array we're searching. And then J plus 1 is over here looking at the last index, so we can already see it. So if we hadn't put this minus 1, we would have gotten an out of bounds error. We would have gone 1 over and checked nothing, and you would have gotten an error in your program. So that's kind of that. And then all now we're going to have to do is the swap code. So I'll put us on the swap page. So basically our swap code will ask the question, right? So is the index we're looking at greater than the index in front of it? So if array at index j is greater than array at index j plus 1, then we'll do something, right? So then we'll swap them. So we'll do int temp, because we're going to want a temp variable to be able to swap this, equals, we'll do array j. And then what we'll do is we'll do array j equals array j plus 1. We're writing this variable over with j plus 1, and then we'll do array j plus 1 is equal to temp. So we don't actually lose that data. We'll put that back in there. And this should be the entirety of the bubble sort. It's a pretty simple function. It's a pretty simple algorithm. So we'll write it down here. Bubble sort, we'll pass our array in. It's passed by reference, so we know it's going to change, and it'll print out properly here. So let's just go ahead and run it. Yep, 52864, and then 24568. So that looks just about right. So a cool thing we can do now, put this back at the front here. Yeah, so a cool thing we can do now is go ahead and step through the application and actually see it happen in real time. So I'm going to put a breakpoint here, and I'll run the debugger. Yeah, so here we can see our variable array, and we start with, you can see the indexes, so 0 is 5, right? 52864, so 52864. So we have the exact same setup right now, and it should be identical to the process we did here on the right. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at 5, right? And in software, that would be looking at array j. So we're right here right now, and then we're going to look at the index in front of it. So we're going to use array j plus 1, and then we're going to ask the question, right? Is index 0 greater than index 1? And that's the entire if statement. So if this first index is greater than the index in front of it, we'll swap them. In this case, you know, it is actually greater. So you should see in the code, we'll go into this, which we did right here. You can see our arrow. And I guess I'll go a little bit ahead and you can see the swap. So temp now equals 5 because it was array j. Array j is now going to equal j plus 1. So 0 is now going to equal 2. Yep, and you can see that change right here. And then now what we're going to do is we're going to do array j plus 1 equals temp. So the index 1 should go back to 5. Yep. I'll just cycle over one more time. But you can see now we have 25864 and we have 25864. So it should be exactly the same. And we'll just keep stepping over it. So now we're going to look at 5 and 8. So it's going to be the same thing. We'll ignore that one because it's not greater. 8 and 6, that one's greater, so we'll swap them. So now we're on 8 and 6. We're in here, we're doing the swap. And you can kind of just see down here. I'll go a little bit fast, but you can see it swapping down here. There we go. So we'll have 25684. 25684. All right, so now we know our program seems to be working right. So 8 and 4, is it greater? Yes, it is. So we'll do another swap. Yep, so now we're in this if statement. We know we're swapping. 25648. 25648. So yep, this one should be done, and you can see here it's already in the last index. So the largest number is in the last index. Now we can only have to look at this bottom half. So we'll just start again. 0 and 1. Not going to do anything there, right? 5 and 6, not going to do anything there, so I'll just skip over those. 6 and 4, that's a swap, and you'll see it happen here. There we go. Yep. So 25468, 25468. So we're keeping going, and we only did 3 iterations that time. You see we already popped out. So, yep. We're already on our outer loop now. We're going to start the next iteration. So we're on iteration 3, and we should only do 2 checks in the middle, which will be the first 2 numbers, which we're not going to do anything there. But we will do something here. Yep, so we went in there, swapped them, 24568, 24568, and then we should exit this loop and start our next iteration. Yeah, so now we're exiting. 3rd iteration completed, so now we're on the 4th iteration. Even though it's already sorted, we still have to check. So we'll check it, ignore it, we know it's sorted, and then we're pretty much done. That should be it. We exit out of the loop. Because we already know the first index is already going to be sorted once we've done everything else. Alright, so that should be the end of the tutorial. This is a pretty simple algorithm. It's not too crazy, but it's really good to get started with sorts. It's one of the more simple sorts, pretty much the most simple sort. I think most classes start with this. It's not the most efficient. It's n squared. So it doesn't work with very large data sets, but if you're just getting started with algorithms and sorting algorithms, this one will be your friend. But yep, that should be everything. If you guys have any questions or want any help doing any bubble sorts, leave some comments below. I can clear anything up that I may have missed, and I appreciate it. Thank you.